During the corporate event, my wife's boss posted a shocking photo with her, and that same night she begged me to stay. It started with a key card, a single, thin, plastic rectangle that changed the way I looked at the woman I thought I knew better than anyone. It was a Sunday afternoon in Sacramento, warm and breezy, one of those days where the sunlight just kind of drapes itself over everything like a filter. We were at Erin's sister's house for their monthly family brunch, the kind where the coffee flows like wine and the wine flows like water. Her dad was telling the same old Navy story he tells every time we're there. Her mom was yelling over the blender trying to get someone to help with the fruit salad, and kids were running barefoot across the hardwood floors like it was a racetrack. It was noisy, chaotic, familiar, comfortable. I offered to help hang coats when we got there. An easy excuse to escape the loud kitchen. Erin had worn her light gray sports jacket, the one she usually keeps in the back seat of her car, half forgotten until some late meeting or chilly night jog makes it relevant again. I went to hang it up in the hallway closet, but when I picked it up, I felt something rigid tucked in the inner chest pocket. Curiosity, not suspicion, made me pull it out. A hotel key card. Not just any hotel, though, the Lantern Inn, downtown. The kind of place with valet-only parking, lavender-scented towels, and $20 cocktails with names like Urban Sigh and Velvet Undertow. I'd only been there once for a friend's engagement party a year ago. Erin? Not recently. At least not that I knew of. I flipped the card over and stared at the embossed logo. It was warm, faintly so, like it hadn't been in that pocket long. Then I felt the second hit. Tucked behind the keycard was a folded receipt. The ink was fresh, not yet faded from age or exposure. It was from the same hotel, time-stamped at 12:47 a.m. The night before. 2 cocktails. A Manhattan and a gin fizz. The receipt was marked, Room 612. A pulse kicked up in my neck. I didn't want to assume anything. Not yet. I tucked the receipt and the card back in the pocket, hung the coat, and made my way back to the kitchen, where Erin was pouring orange juice into champagne flutes and laughing with her sister about something I'd missed. She caught my eye and smiled. It was the kind of smile she gave strangers when she wanted to seem approachable. Pleasant, practiced. Not fake exactly, but definitely controlled. I sat at the edge of the island, watched her pour another round, and told myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Or that there was a logical explanation. Maybe she'd picked up the jacket after someone else had borrowed it. Maybe the card wasn't hers. Maybe the receipt had gotten mixed up at work. Something. Anything. But that nagging throb in my stomach. It stayed. When she stepped outside to take a call, I pulled out my phone and opened our banking app. We share an account mostly for household bills and groceries. Erin handles most of the spending, but I still check in occasionally. I scrolled down to the last 48 hours and there it was. 2 charges from the Lantern Inn. One at 11:36 p.m. One again at 1:03 a.m. Double charged. Same vendor. Same night. I stared at the screen, willing the numbers to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. When Erin came back in, I waited until we were alone for a moment, standing near the sink while everyone else migrated to the dining table. I kept my voice low. Hey. Weird question. Were you at the Lantern Inn last night? She looked at me, just for a second, and something flickered behind her eyes. Then she laughed, easy and dismissive. Oh, that. No, well, kind of. It was for work. Grant booked a few rooms downtown for the weekend project sprint, and I got stuck with check-in. Billing was a mess, and I had to use my card to cover the hold on one of the rooms. I'm getting reimbursed. It's nothing. She shrugged like it really was nothing, like I was the one reaching. Then she tapped my arm and asked me to go grab the backup bottle of sparkling wine from the car. Tell me you remembered it, she said with a grin. My mom will riot if we run out of bubbles. I nodded slowly, numb, and made my way to the car without responding. My hands moved automatically. Trunk, bottle, back inside. But my mind was stuck in that closet, staring at the key card, the receipt, the exact room number scrawled in blue ink by a sleepy concierge or a careless bartender. I wanted to press again, push, but not there, not then. We were surrounded by her family, people who loved her, who trusted her, who probably wouldn't think twice if she said I was being paranoid. What would I even say? Hey everyone. Sorry to interrupt the mimosas and cinnamon rolls, but does anyone want to explain why my wife spent the night at a boutique hotel that charges by the hour after midnight cocktails labeled with a room number? No, I'd look crazy. Worse, insecure, jealous, controlling. All the things men are afraid to be labeled when they finally start asking questions. So I let it go. Outwardly, at least. Inside, the question kept echoing. I watched her that day with a new kind of awareness. I watched how she avoided eye contact with her mom when she asked about work. I watched her refill everyone's glasses except mine. I watched her scroll through her phone under the table when she thought no one was looking. I saw how easily she could smile while lying through her teeth. That night, when we got home, I asked her again. More directly this time. I showed her the bank statement. She sighed, her whole demeanor shifting, like she was tired of being questioned. Like I was the one creating drama. I already told you, she said, her tone clipped. It was for work. Do you want me to call Grant? Would that make you feel better? That should have been a red flag, the offer to drag someone else in to prove a story that never quite fit. But I didn't take her up on it. I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak without letting something ugly out. She kissed me on the cheek that night before bed, soft and absent, like muscle memory. I laid awake for a long time staring at the ceiling. It wasn't about the hotel key anymore. It was about how easily she explained it away. How quickly she flipped the script. From nothing happened to, why are you still on this? No anger, no guilt, no confusion, just redirection, confidence. That's what stuck with me. She'd made me feel foolish for even asking. And yet, the next morning, I checked the jacket again before leaving for work. The card was gone. No explanation. No mention of it. Just gone. And that's when I knew something had shifted. Something small, yes. Barely visible even. But real. Tangible. I just didn't know yet how deep it went. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat in the living room in the dark with a notepad and a glass of whiskey I wasn't really drinking. I just needed something to hold. Something to make the silence feel less suffocating. I couldn't shake the feeling I'd been deliberately led away from something I wasn't supposed to see. So I did what anyone does when suspicion settles in. I started remembering things. Not the big things, we weren't yelling at each other, we didn't have some explosive argument or major fracture. It was the small things. The ones you ignore in real time because they seem petty or irrelevant. But looking back, they're like tiny breadcrumbs, each one leading you further into a story you didn't want to read. Her phone was always on silent now. Not just silent. Muted and flipped over, face down, like it was sleeping with secrets she didn't want anyone to wake up. I used to get texts from her during the day, quick check-ins, memes, reminders. Lately, nothing unless I texted first. Even then, half the time it was one-word replies or delayed so long they felt like afterthoughts. She had new passwords too, subtle ones. I realized it when I reached for the iPad we used to share and couldn't unlock it anymore. She shrugged when I asked, said she'd changed it because of work privacy rules. That she forgot to tell me. That it wasn't a big deal. But it was a big deal because the lock wasn't just on the device, it was between us. The invisible kind. A slow erosion of shared access, casual transparency, and unspoken trust. You only notice it when it's already too late. Then there were the photos. We used to have tons of couple pics on her Instagram. Weekend getaways, birthdays, even just random brunch selfies. They were never the overly curated kind. Just **TS of regular life. Sometime in the past couple months, they all vanished. Quietly. I didn't even notice until I scrolled through her profile one night, looking for a picture of us at her cousin's wedding. It was gone. So were the others. When I asked her about it, again carefully, she laughed. "Oh, please," she said. "You're acting like I scrubbed my identity. I archived some stuff. I'm trying to clean up my page a little, that's all. It looks messy with old filters." But the only things that disappeared were the ones with me in them. She hadn't deleted the dog photos. Or the yoga studio selfies. or the latte art, just the relationship. At first, I told myself I was being dramatic, overthinking. Guys online said it all the time: don't snoop, don't let insecurity take over. Trust until you have a reason not to. But when you're living with someone who feels increasingly like a stranger, every little behavior starts ringing louder. She started coming home later and later, always citing work. Last-minute meetings, sudden dinners, crisis mode campaigns that required the whole team to stay. And for a while, I believed it. I mean, advertising can be brutal. Grant, her department head, was known for pushing his team hard, especially during launch seasons. But then came the nights where she didn't just come home late. She came home changed. Different perfume. Subtle, sure, but not the one I bought her last Christmas. This one was sharper, masculine, not unpleasant, but distinctly not hers. I mentioned it once, playfully. New scent. She didn't miss a beat. I sprayed one from the samples basket in the lobby, the one near the elevators. I didn't want to smell like Thai food from lunch. She always had a reason. Always. Another time, I noticed her driver's seat had been pushed all the way back, too far for her to reach the pedals comfortably. I'd taken her car to get it washed while she was in yoga. When I asked about it, she told me she'd given a coworker a ride and he was tall. Grant, she said again. That name was starting to show up more and more. Everyone left together, but he needed to swing by a print shop for last-minute banner edits, she explained. It was just on the way. Grant, again. I didn't even know what this guy looked like, but suddenly he was in every story. I asked her once, half joking, "Is Grant your work husband now?" She just raised an eyebrow and said, "Don't be weird." And that was the end of that. At home, she'd grown distant in ways that didn't always look like distance, at least not right away. She still smiled, still said "love you" when heading out, but there was no warmth behind it. Her eyes didn't linger. Her touch had cooled. We used to brush up against each other in the kitchen just because. Now we moved around each other like magnets flipped the wrong way. We stopped kissing goodnight. I couldn't even remember the last time she reached for me in bed. When I tried, sometimes she'd flinch just slightly, like I'd interrupted a thought or pulled her from someplace she didn't want to leave. That hurt the most. And then there was the anger, the short fuse. Things that never bothered her before suddenly lit her up. I forgot to take the trash out one morning and she snapped. I bought the wrong almond milk, vanilla unsweetened instead of plain unsweetened, and she acted like I'd ruined her whole week. I'd say something simple, "How was your day?" and she'd exhale like I was interrogating her. I started walking on eggshells in my own house. One night, I came home with takeout from her favorite Thai spot. No occasion, just trying to do something nice. She looked at the bags and asked if I'd remembered the no-peanut spring rolls. I hadn't. Honest mistake. She barely ate, said she had work to finish, and closed the bedroom door behind her. I ate alone. After she fell asleep, I walked quietly to her car and peeked inside. I don't even know what I was looking for. A name, a receipt, anything. I found nothing. Just that faint smell of cologne again. Not mine. That was when I made a decision. Not to accuse her. Not to explode. But to pay closer attention. If I was wrong, I'd be relieved. If I was right, well, I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. So I started tracking the patterns. Quietly, without drama. Dates, excuses, locations. I wrote them down in a small notebook I kept hidden behind a stack of manuals in the garage. Felt insane at first, like I was building a conspiracy out of shadows. But the longer I did it, the clearer the picture became. Same excuse, late meeting. Same time, between 10 o'clock and midnight. Same silence. No texts unless I sent them first. One night, I heard her laughing in the hallway before she walked in. When I asked who she'd been talking to, she said, "Just Grant. He says hi." Then she headed to the bathroom, humming. She never used to hum after work. I started checking her location through our shared Find My app. Half the time it said, "Location not available." The other half, she was near work, even when her meetings supposedly ended across town. Once I drove by her office building late at night. It was dark. The parking lot was nearly empty, just 3 cars. Hers wasn't one of them. She came home 20 minutes later, claiming she'd stayed behind to help Grant with final copy approvals. She still had her work badge hanging from her neck. She was always prepared, always believable. But I wasn't stupid. I wasn't angry, not yet. Just hollow, like a dam that hasn't broken, but has started leaking. You know it's coming. You just don't know when. I kept telling myself I needed proof. Not just patterns or instincts or subtle shifts. Actual proof. Because deep down, I still wanted to be wrong. I wanted this to be a misunderstanding. Stress. Burnout. Anything but betrayal. But some part of me, the part that had started noticing every missed smile, every half-lie, every brushed-off question, already knew what the rest of me refused to say out loud. Something was happening, and she wasn't going to tell me. It had rained that day. The city still held onto the smell of wet asphalt and exhaust, a kind of heaviness that matched the way I felt walking through downtown. I'd been pacing the idea for weeks, whether I should follow her, whether I could stomach the answer if I found it. But I was tired of waiting, tired of doubt chewing holes in my thoughts. I didn't want another maybe. I needed the truth. Hard, sharp, unedited. She told me she'd be working late again. Last round of creative reviews, she'd said. Grant's making us stay until it's perfect. She smiled like it was just another annoying deadline. But that night I didn't go home. I drove to the Lantern Inn. Same boutique hotel as before. The one from the keycard, the receipt, the double charge she brushed off like it was barely worth a sentence. It had stayed in my mind like a song lyric you can't shake. The pieces were circling back to that place, and I was ready to see it for myself. I parked 2 blocks away. Didn't want to be obvious. Didn't want to be seen unless I had to be. I walked the rest of the way, hoodie up, hands buried in my pockets like I was just another guy out for a smoke break or K*ling time before a show. No one paid me any mind. That's the thing about downtown at night. Everyone's got their own secrets to carry. The Lantern sat on a corner with warm gold lighting and smoked glass doors that looked more like an art gallery than a hotel. The kind of place where people go not to sleep, but to disappear. I stood across the street and waited. For a while, nothing happened. Cars pulled up, people came and went, couples, travelers, business types. I kept checking my phone even though there were no new messages. Just her last one. Don't wait up. Might be a long night. It was already 9:37, and then I saw her. She stepped out of a black SUV, coat tucked over one arm, hair up in a way I hadn't seen in months. Not a messy bun. Not her usual low ponytail, but styled. Done. Her heels clicked softly against the pavement as she crossed the lobby threshold like she belonged there. And she wasn't alone. Grant. I recognized him from the company newsletter I'd skimmed once months ago. The welcome our new department head, Hedge*T with a forced smile and overgelled hair. In person, he looked taller, more confident. The kind of guy who talks too loud at lunch and makes eye contact for too long. They weren't just together. They were together. He held the door open for her, and she laughed at something he said before stepping inside. I moved closer, just enough to see through the glass. They didn't go to the front desk. Didn't wait in line. They turned immediately toward the mezzanine level. A small lounge area with low couches and candles glowing on every table. I couldn't hear what they said, but I could see how she leaned into him. How his hand settled on her thigh like it had been there before. I watched her smile. The smile that used to be mine. I stayed rooted to the sidewalk, half hidden behind a concrete column, heart thudding like a slow drumbeat. I should have felt rage, or heartbreak, but mostly I felt numb, like my brain had disconnected from the moment, already retreating somewhere safer. It was happening, right there in front of me, and I was barely breathing. Then it happened. They kissed. No hesitation. No scanning the room. Just lips pressed together like they'd done it 100 times. Maybe they had. Maybe this was just Tuesday for them. They stood, and she took the key card from his hand. He placed his hand low on her back as they walked to the elevator, laughing softly, close enough to be one person. The doors opened. They stepped inside. And then they were gone. I stood there, staring at the closed elevator, knowing what floor they were headed to. Probably the same one as before. Maybe even the same room, 612. It wasn't suspicion anymore. Wasn't intuition. Wasn't paranoia. It was fact. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Not for revenge. Not for social media. Just for me. I filmed the lobby, the timestamp on the wall, the direction they went. I captured the moment. I didn't need to confront them. I didn't want the performance, the stammering lies, the theatrical apologies. I just wanted truth. Undeniable and still. I stood there for a few more minutes, unsure of what to do next. It's funny how you think you'll have a plan. That you'll know exactly what to say or how to act when the worst finally happens. But the truth is, you just go quiet. You shut down. You get very, very still. Eventually, I turned and walked back to my car. The whole world felt slower, like I was underwater. The drive home was a blur. My hands clenched the steering wheel hard enough to ache. I didn't play music. I didn't think. I just followed the traffic lights like they were the only thing holding me together. When I got home, I didn't turn on any lights. I dropped my keys on the counter and sat on the couch, staring at nothing. The house was quiet, her side of the bed untouched, our dog sleeping in his crate. Everything looked exactly the same, except nothing was. She came home just after 1 a.m. I heard the garage door creak, her heels clicking softly on the tile. I didn't move. She found me still sitting there, in the dark. "Hey," she said carefully. "You're up." I didn't respond. "Long night," she added. "We got a ton done though. I'm wiped." She kissed the top of my head as she passed behind the couch. Her voice was calm, practiced, not a single tremor. I waited for something, hesitation, guilt, a glance too long, but there was nothing. I wanted to scream, to confront, to throw the truth in her face and watch it shatter the performance. But I didn't. I let her go upstairs. I let her wash her face, climb into bed, scroll her phone like it was any other night. Because in that moment, I realized something. The game wasn't over. Not yet. There were still layers, still masks, still lies. And I wasn't going to let her slip away from this with silence and denial. I needed her to see what she'd done, clearly, directly, without a single escape route. And when that moment came, I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to show her exactly who she'd become. But not yet. For now, I just sat there, phone in hand, recording saved, truth intact. The universe has a twisted sense of timing. 3 days after I watched my wife kiss another man in a hotel lobby and disappear behind a closing elevator door, I stood beside her, dressed in a tailored navy suit, smiling for photos at a corporate gala as if we were still the golden couple everyone thought we were. The event was for her company, an annual blowout thrown by their parent brand at the downtown convention center, complete with past hors d'oeuvres, overlit stages, and an open bar that promised poor decisions. Erin had RSVP'd months ago. It was one of those appearances she couldn't skip without raising eyebrows, and when she asked if I'd still come with her, I said yes. Why? Because now I wanted to see it up close. I wanted to watch the way she moved in public, how she introduced me to coworkers, how she kept one eye on the room like she was waiting for someone. She was radiant that night. Confident, polished, impossible to read. You never would have guessed she was living a double life. She floated through the crowd like nothing was wrong, like her world wasn't built on a scaffolding of lies and secrecy. The event started predictably. Speeches from execs, inside jokes I didn't understand, applause for marketing metrics no one outside that world cared about. I nursed a drink at the edge of the room and let the noise roll over me. Erin was busy working the room, as she called it, bouncing from circle to circle, always a little too quick to laugh, too casual when someone said, "Where's Grant tonight?" Eventually, he arrived. I spotted him before she did. Grant, the man from the hotel, walked in wearing a charcoal suit and a grin that was a little too comfortable. He didn't look nervous. He didn't scan the room like a man carrying guilt. He looked content, smug even, like this night was his stage and everyone else was just a guest on it. When he and Erin finally locked eyes, it was brief. A flash of recognition, A half-smile exchanged across the room, but I saw it. Not just familiarity. Int asterisk Macy. She bit the inside of her lip and glanced away like a teenager caught passing notes in class. I felt my stomach knot. What happened next came faster than I expected. Later that night, somewhere around the third or fourth drink, Grant posted a series of photos to social media. Not just his personal feed, but the company's official event page, too. A cluster of uploads from the VIP lounge at the back of the venue. Low lighting, champagne flutes, velvet couches. Erin was in them, not in the background, not casually captured in a crowd. Front and center. With him. The first photo was harmless enough. The two of them sitting close, laughing, her hand resting on the back of the couch behind him. The second? Less innocent. His hand on her knee, her head tilted toward his like they were sharing a secret. The third? A selfie of the two of them, her head nestled into his neck, her eyes half-lidded, captioned, "Power Couple Energy." Hashtag after hours, hashtag team building. Posted from his phone. Publicly. From both accounts. And no one stopped him. I saw the posts from across the room. Notifications buzzed on phones in pockets and clutched in hands. Conversations started to falter. People began to whisper. A few glanced over toward Erin. I watched as the ripple moved across the room like a slow leak of poison into clean water. She hadn't seen it yet. I stepped outside onto the balcony to breathe. When I came back in, the damage had started. Someone had forwarded the post to the event Slack. A group chat of coworkers were crowded around a phone, eyebrows raised. One woman actually muttered, "Isn't she married?" And then I saw Erin, standing frozen near the bar, phone in hand, eyes locked on the screen like it had turned to ice. She wasn't smiling anymore. The blood drained from her face. She looked up, scanning the room like a deer just realizing the headlights are real. And when her eyes landed on me, across the room, calmly holding my drink, I saw something that I hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. Not guilt. Not sadness. Fear. I didn't move. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't approach her. I just let her live in that moment. The one where everything she'd hidden was now out in the open. The fallout was immediate. People stopped talking to her. Some politely excused themselves. Others avoided her entirely. Even Grant had enough sense to slink away after someone from HR pulled him aside with a look that said, "What the hell were you thinking?" By the time we left, Erin was silent in the car. She didn't even touch the wheel. I drove. When we got home, she followed me inside like a ghost. Heels in hand, makeup smudged, silence stretched tight between us. She stood in the doorway of the kitchen, watching me pour a glass of water like it was suddenly the most important thing in the world. "I didn't know he posted that," she said finally, her voice cracking. I didn't answer. "He was drunk. He shouldn't have." She trailed off. "That's not how I wanted you to find out." "Find out?" I almost laughed. But I didn't. I turned to face her. "I already knew," I said, quiet but certain. Her eyes widened. "What?" "I was at the Lantern Inn. Tuesday night." She took a step back like I'd slapped her. "I saw you. With him. I watched you kiss him. I recorded it. So no, I didn't find out from a selfie." She covered her mouth with one hand, shaking her head. No, I can explain." "There's nothing left to explain, Erin." Tears welled in her eyes then. For the first time, the mask broke. She stepped forward, reaching for me. "Please," she whispered. "Don't do this. Don't walk away from me." "You already walked away," I said. "You just didn't tell me." She dropped to her knees on the kitchen floor. I didn't move. Not to comfort. Not to console. I just stood there, watching the pieces fall around her like the aftermath of a storm she swore wasn't coming. "I was stupid," she sobbed. "It didn't mean anything. It wasn't supposed to go this far." "It meant enough to lie," I said. "It meant enough to hide. It meant enough to post." She tried again. "I love you." But it was too late. That night, I slept in the guest room. She stayed curled up on the couch, crying softly, whispering things into her phone that I didn't care to hear. By morning, it had all hit the wider world. Someone had taken **TS of the posts. Her aunt texted me asking if we were okay. My coworker forwarded me the image with a question mark. Her own father, who adored her, called me sounding confused, like someone had read him the wrong script. "It has to be fake," he said. I didn't correct him. Let her explain it. Let her try. I left the house early that morning. Didn't say goodbye. And for the first time in years I felt light. Not happy. Not victorious. Just light. Because the burden of pretending was no longer mine to carry. Now everyone knew. I didn't leave that morning because I wanted to hurt her. I left because I didn't want to play the part anymore. For so long, I had tried to hold us together. Fix things she wouldn't name. Solve problems she denied existed. Bend into shapes just to make sure nothing broke. But after that night at the gala, after the photos, the crying, the lies laid out bare, something in me gave way. Not like a snap, but more like a quiet turning of a wheel. A shift I didn't announce, but one I felt in every part of me. And from that moment on, I stopped trying. I didn't slam doors. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't leave a trail of accusations or icy stares. Instead, I did something she didn't expect. I went quiet. Not silent exactly, I still spoke when necessary. But the parts of me that had been so constantly, instinctively engaged in keeping our life afloat, those parts went still. I stopped performing the small, unnoticed gestures that once came as second nature. I didn't refill her water glass when we sat at the table. I didn't grab her charger when she left it in the other room. I didn't make a mental note of her schedule. I didn't ask how her meetings went or if she made it to yoga or if she needed anything from the store. I just let her handle herself. At the cafe we used to visit every Sunday, I ordered only my drink. No second cup with almond milk and cinnamon syrup. No extra croissant because she always steals mine anyway. I paid, tipped, and sat alone. I watched the light come in through the window and let myself exist there without being on call for someone else's comfort. She noticed quickly. The first few days she tried to pretend nothing had changed. She filled the silence with one-sided conversations, chattering about her coworkers and errands as if nothing had happened. She'd ask me things like, "Did you sleep okay?" Or, "Do you want to watch something later?" Questions she hadn't asked in months. I gave her polite answers. Never unkind, never sharp. Just short enough to make it clear that I wasn't playing along anymore. At home, I moved differently. I started waking up early again before the sun. Something I used to do religiously but had let go of when our routines merged and I adjusted to hers. I put my running shoes back by the door. Every morning, I ran a quiet loop by the lake, headphones in, breathing deep. The cold air against my skin made me feel real again. Like something solid in a world that had gone soft with manipulation. When I got back, she'd be in the kitchen pretending to scroll her phone, pretending not to notice how I walked past her without the usual kiss to the cheek or morning, babe. She started cooking more, making coffee, setting out my favorite granola. All the things I used to do for her now reversed, like she thought mirroring the motions would undo the damage. But she was too late. It wasn't about spite. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I reclaimed my old projects. Things that had gathered dust in the garage, my motorcycle, for one. I'd been meaning to repair the front forks for over a year, but life, marriage, and emotional fatigue had gotten in the way. Now I spent hours out there with the door open, socket wrench in hand, music playing low. She'd come out sometimes, hovering like she wanted to say something, but I never invited her in. Evenings were mine again. Instead of sitting beside her on the couch while she scrolled through her phone or sent messages I didn't ask about, I sat on the back porch with a book and a blanket. Sometimes I'd write. In an old leather notebook I hadn't touched since before we got married. I wrote things I couldn't say, things she didn't deserve to hear. Inside the house, the distance grew. She filled it with offerings, cooked dinners, folded my laundry, left little notes again. "Hope your run felt good," or "Made you chamomile. It's on the stove." I thank her, briefly, politely, but I never reciprocated. She tried physical touch next. A hand on my back as I passed through the kitchen. her fingers brushing mine when we reached for the same plate. But I didn't respond. I didn't flinch, didn't pull away, I just didn't give anything back. And that, more than anything, seemed to shake her. Because before, I would have leaned in, kissed her neck, wrapped my arms around her waist. Before, I was always reaching. Now I didn't, and she felt it. The absence of effort became its own language. One she hadn't learned how to speak. One night, I came home to candlelight and one of my favorite albums playing on vinyl. Something we hadn't listened to together in years. The house smelled like garlic and lemon, and she stood in the kitchen in that old navy sweater I always liked. She looked beautiful, familiar. For a second, I almost stepped toward her. Then I remembered how she looked in Grant's arms, how she smiled at him, how she walked into that hotel with a sense of purpose, not hesitation. And the spell broke. I told her dinner smelled good. Then I went upstairs and took a long shower. When I came back down, she was sitting at the table alone, pushing food around her plate. She didn't say a word. That's when I realized the shift wasn't just happening in me. It was happening in her too. She'd expected anger, expected a fight, something she could push against, argue with, weep through. But I hadn't given her that. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't begged or pleaded or thrown things or stormed out. And because of that, she had nothing to hold on to. No script, no performance. Just the mirror of her own choices staring her down in silence. I watched her struggle to fill that silence with softness, with old routines and practiced sweetness. But it rang hollow like a play we'd already seen. Her movements were careful now, strategic. She asked questions she didn't used to ask. Do you want to go hiking this weekend? Should we plan a trip? How about dinner with my parents? But the damage wasn't logistical. It was spiritual. Trust, once broken, doesn't just heal because someone remembers your coffee order or folds your shirts the way you like. It heals when the person admits who they've become. And she hadn't done that. Not once. She'd apologized. She'd cried. But she hadn't owned it. Not really. Not without qualification. Not without I was tired or it wasn't supposed to happen or you were so distant. So I stayed quiet.